This time on KEI Fabrication.
I think it's important that we start really focusing on the drag week list. Hide all the women and children. Hide all the women and children. Hide all the women and children. All the grinding's done. Time to clean the garage. Well folks, I just came back from the scrapyard. So I ran up to the scrapyard.
Well, we're up here at the junkyard.
Well, we're back in the junkyard. Hey folks, so we just did the opening ceremony. I've got a very basic temperature gauge here. I bought this for the trans temperature. I'm going to install it in a fitting that I'm going to weld into the oil pan. I bought a mini gauge set because I have a spot in the dash that will fit well, and I really want to make sure that my gauges in the dash are accurately telling me my temperature, oil pressure, and every once in a while, especially when I had alternator problems, the voltage, because it's wired through the dash, as soon as the alternator dropped out, the dash almost shut itself off completely. Once it gets below a certain voltage, the dash isn't happy, so I wanted a backup voltage reading. So not that these are super high quality gauges, but they are just a peace of mind in terms of what's going on with my... I'm really leery of the oil pressure sensor. It seems like it's reading high, so we'll verify that once I get it put in. And there's a nice spot in the dash to put this little tiny gauge panel. So I'll show you that during the install. A couple of the other things that came in. I bought this little fan for the trans cooler that I have. I have a remote trans cooler mounted in front of the radiator, and the only time it's really getting cool air right now is when I'm moving. When I'm sitting still, very little air is flowing through the trans cooler. That's one of the reasons why I bought the trans temp gauge. I want to just make sure I keep the temperatures low. The other thing this will do, it's only rated for like 600 CFM or something like that, but the trans cooler is mounted in front of the radiator, so whatever additional cooling this little fan provides should force some more air through the radiator. I got a big radiator in it and a big electric fan, but it does not cover up or draw air through the trans cooler. So this is an insurance policy for drag week, and it's probably something that should have been done all along. I've been driving it for a year now. I haven't been beating the truck up too hard. I haven't been towing much or hauling much with it, so I'm not worried about the trans temperature just yet. On that same subject, what I've done, I did run this once at the drag strip, and between rounds, when I shut the vehicle off, obviously you get heat soak, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this switch. I got a blue switch because I'm going to, when you turn it on, it's going to activate the relay that is going to power up both the main engine cooling fan and the transmission fan simultaneously. I'm also going to hook this up to a relay that is triggered from the engine coolant temperature sensor. So as soon as the big fan kicks on for the engine coolant temperature, the little fan will kick on at the same time. On that note, I'm stepping up the wire size. Right now I have a lot of 12 gauge wiring to all of the high amp draw items in the truck, so I'm going from 12 gauge to 10 gauge for the cooling fans and not having the small wire choking things up. One of the things I did during my brake conversion is I put the line lock in. Right now I have the line lock activated by the horn button. It's on the crossbar. It's right there where my hand is when I'm on the starting line, and I push the button with the horn button with my finger. The relay for the line lock is activated, but now I'm driving around with no horn. So because this is a daily driver, I'm going to have a switch that it's power out on 2 poles with a common. So the relay will come in to the center post, the horn will go to one post, and the line lock will go to the other. So my plan is when the switch is up, the horn beeps. When the switch is down, the line lock works, or something to that matter. So I've been driving around for a week or so without the thing, and not that I'm from Massachusetts or anything. I don't live by my horn and beep it the second somebody doesn't move at a stoplight or whatever, but I do enjoy when I see somebody, a friend of mine in my neighborhood or whatever, just give them a quick beep of the horn. And right now I'm not doing that. So in the interest of DC voltage and increasing power, right now the battery is behind the seat in the cab. I'm going to move it to right back here under the bed, and it's going to be mounted in a bracket that's on the frame. I'm putting it on the right rear corner behind the rear axle to offset some of the weight of the driver. NHRA doesn't allow the battery to be mounted inside the passenger compartment unless you've got a really expensive fully sealed battery box, and I just don't have the $150 to spend on either a Jeg, Summit, or Moroso battery box. What I do have is some very nice 2/0 welding cable that's brand new on a spool, and I bought the ends. I have the crimper to terminate the ends here, and so I'm going to make new battery supply cables, positive cable to go to the starter, and then another one to go back to a main power terminal that is going to distribute power to the relay box through this 10 gauge wire. I've got some ring terminals here for the 10 gauge wire. I've got some ring terminals for my line lock switch, and then I don't know how this happened, but new lawnmower blades showed up, and you know how my feeling is of yard work, so we'll just have to hide those. So in the next couple of days, I'm going to tinker around with some of the easy stuff. I'm going to try and get my gauges and instrumentation taken care of, upgrade my wiring. The other thing I want to mention is all of this stuff is kind of in conjunction with my list here. Now I've got a few things on the list that I can cross off. I'm going to consider my front brakes completely done. My whole braking system, minus the emergency brake, is done, and that actually has its own line item down here. So I'm going to be able to cross off the front brake one as soon as I get my switch to alternate between the horn button, activating the line lock, and the horn. I can cross that off the list. My front shocks are installed. My front end is completely rebuilt now. The alignment is done. I'm very happy with it. So a lot of these things I've taken care of. I've lowered the front end. I'm going to lower the rear end. Now that the front is lowered, I know what I can need to lower the rear end to. Right now my lowering blocks are 1.25 inches for the rear, and I'm concerned that's just going to make the ride height of the truck a little lower in the rear than in the front. So I may actually go to 1 inch or 3/4 inch in the rear. As I mentioned with the battery cables and ends, I'm going to relocate the battery. I'm going to start getting a handle on my gauges, the engine related ones. I got a trans temp gauge that I showed you, trans cooler fan. So all the things that I ordered are directly as a result of generating this list. I've got the front bumper that I think if you watched the previous video you saw that I ordered from eBay. I have the cam and springs. I'm trying to wait till I have a good block of time, maybe you know, 2 solid days back to back, because I've really got to take the whole truck apart from the front bumper all the way to the block of the engine to get the radiator out and the cam out. At that time I'm going to do the cooling fan for the transmission. I have a plan for some exhaust turn downs. What I want to do is I've got short tube headers on here. What I'm trying to do is uncork the headers and make it easy to do at the track. So I'm going to put some 45-degree elbows in the exhaust system with caps on them that I can undo at the track. I just don't want to spend the $400 for exhaust cutouts that are electronically operated. They're kind of illegal in many states. So as you all know, I'm very cheap. The polite word for that is frugal, thrifty. I'm just cheap. I don't like to spend money, and my heritage is I'm a swamp Yankee. You can look that up in a dictionary or Wikipedia. We try to do a lot with nothing, and we try not to spend any money, and we don't mind spending the time, putting the effort in to do it. So so for 30 bucks I can buy a pair of turnouts, graft them into my stock exhaust system, and I'll show you all that when I do it. That'll be a video all on its own. And I'll make some caps. I'll fabricate some caps that are gasketed so they don't leak. I hate exhaust leaks. And hopefully we'll pick up a little bit of horsepower because we'll have more free-flowing exhaust at the track. The fan switch I mentioned, and I did go to the junkyard. This is one downfall of being cheap and a swamp Yankee and getting everything from a junkyard. My right rear axle has like 1/8 of an inch of run out at the brake rotor. So I've got to get another one of those and swap it out. So I want to do that. The e-brake, all the cables are run. I have to make the change from the Mazda factory cable, the Ford Explorer brake cables. That whole emergency brake system is completely rebuilt. Brand new rotors, all new emergency brake shoes and cables and hardware. So all that's brand new. So I really want to hook that up. There's really nothing worse than having a brake line blow out and not having anything to fall back on. So I want to get that done. There's a lot of heat that gets trapped under the hood, and I want to try and maybe drill some holes in the engine compartment to vent some of that heat out at the cowl just below the windshield. That's an idea I have. I think I can actually do some instrumentation to measure before and after. I've got to go get some spare tires. Right now I have a boat trailer spare because it's the only thing I have with the Ford bolt pattern. And because I changed the bolt pattern, the spare that's actually still under the truck doesn't fit anymore. So actually this evening I hope to take that out. I do not have a cold air shield around my air intake, so I'd like to put that on to lower the air temperature of the intake, especially on the hot days that we are going to be racing. And I am going to probably fabricate some slapper type traction bars. I don't think I'll have time to install the slider links. Got to do some heavy fabrication, replace spring bushings, spring eye bushings, and many other things to make that happen. Right now I'm thinking make a pair of traction bars. And then the last thing on the list after all this is done, primarily the camshaft and valve springs and the exhaust turnouts. I really got to go get it tuned. So I'm saving up. I've sold a few things on eBay and Craigslist to generate some cash to pay one of the premier HP tuner guys around here. I've got some dyno time scheduled, so that hopefully will be a fun video and not a catastrophic video. You know, it's a naturally aspirated, but the motor has 190,000 on it, and I'm putting an aggressive cam in and some valve springs, and then we're going to go punish it on the dyno. Anything can happen. So that's a long-winded babbling that's going on. I'm just trying to show you. I think it's important that we start really focusing on the drag week list. I started this list on the 6th of June. I'm happy to report that I have many things that I can cross off, but I also have some long lead time kind of intense things going on the list as well. So I have a lot of work cut out for me. It's vacation time. I've got to spend time with my family, other responsibilities, so I'm really actually kind of stressing a little bit over this whole thing, hands. So anyway, again, that's enough babbling. I'm going to get to work on getting my line lock and my horn situated. I'm going to start laying the groundwork for my gauges and running everything through the dash, getting it out to the engine, and then I will uncork the coolant system to put the water temperature sensor in. Many of you know already, but if you don't know, there's a spot on the oil pan for the oil pressure gauge to tap into. There's a little 2-bolt flange. I believe it's an oil cooler adapter that you can take off, drill and tap a 1/4-inch NPT fitting in there, and then you can hook a mechanical oil pressure gauge in, and then you don't have to disturb the sensor behind the intake at the back of the block. There's another adapter they sell to do that, but it really isn't designed. It really is designed to eliminate the electronic sensor that the factory gauge cluster uses. Those of you who don't know, I took the Silverado gauge cluster and installed it in the Mazda. I'll give you just a quick rundown here. So hopefully you can see that. I put the factory Silverado gauge cluster in the dash. So my line lock switch is going to go here. There's a factory spot for it. This is where my trans temperature gauge is going to go. My analog gauges are going to go right here in this little cubby that was originally designed for sunglasses or something. And then my override switch for my fan is going to go up here somewhere. So that's the plan. Alright, let's get to work.
Next time on KEI Fabrication.
Hey folks, we've come a little ways here with the gauge installation. I ended up putting a switch to turn the cooling fans on and off, the manual override over here.